You might have seen their faces on the pages of Forbes. You might have driven past their expensive houses, seen modern yachts in the largest ports of the world, and perhaps even worked in their businesses. Kolomoyskyi, Firtash, Zhevago, Akhmetov, Poroshenko. You might see these and other surnames in Forbes' list and think, how so? Little Ukraine gave birth to so many billionaires. Good question, isn't it? I'm Maria Druzka, and today we will talk about how the oligarchy was formed in Ukraine, how oligarchs interact with the government, and how this phenomenon slows down the Ukrainian economy. So let's start. There is an opinion that Ukrainian oligarchs were created by the second president of the country, Leonid Kuchma. In particular, this assumption can be made based on his report in 1994 on the main principles of reforming the economy of Ukraine, in which he spoke about the creating financial industrial groups in the country. However, it would be naive to assume that FIGs, both domestic and in other countries, are formed at the whim of one person. What's more, some of them in Ukraine already existed at the same time, so this was more about stating a fact. Another thing is that the appearance of oligarchs in Ukraine is closely related to the conduct of large-scale privatization in the second half of the 1990s, which fell during Leonid Kuchma's first presidential term. This privatization is now commonly referred to as oligarchic. At the same time, the second president of Ukraine tried to keep oligarchs equidistant from himself, thus balancing their interests and influence. You must understand what state the Ukrainian economy was in after the collapse of the Soviet Union: broken industrial chains, a general economic crisis, and empty budget. In turn, Kuchma urgently needed to restart the economy. Foreign investors were in no hurry to invest in Ukraine for quite obvious reasons. So Kuchma turned his attention to potential domestic investors, former members of the party nomenclature, the first businessmen who started earning money back in the times of the USSR, and let's be frank, representatives of the criminal world who sought to legitimize their capital and work abroad. At the same time, Kuchma perfectly understood the essence of the thesis divide and rule, so he tried to divide assets among representatives of formidable groups to create competition between them. After Kuchma, who was in power for over 10 years, Viktor Yushchenko became the head of the state in 2005. Paradoxically, it was under his rule that Ukrainian oligarchs became what they are commonly understood to be: big businessmen influencing politics. The close circle of the presidents received an informal name, dear friends, the most famous of whom was Petro Poroshenko. Also under Yushchenko, Dmitry Firtash and Igor Kolomoyskyi emerged into the oligarch Olympus. Firtash became known for gas supplies for Ukraine through the company Rosukreenergo, which was under his control, and under Russian Gazprom, even during the late Kuchma era. At the same time, Leonid Akhmetov, who had previously been primarily involved with issues on his native Donbass and didn't delve much into nationwide politics, began to gain more prominence. However, in 2002, it is rumored that due to an ultimatum from the Donetsk criminal groups, Kuchma had to agree first on Yanukovych's premiership and then on the actual recognition of the controversial politician as his successor. Despite the fact that in presidential elections in 2004, Akhmetov actively supported Viktor Yanukovych and in 2005 even left Ukraine, fearing possible criminal prosecution, later he was able to reach an agreement with Yushchenko, which allowed him to significantly increase his personal fortune, as well as influence on the political processes in the country. However, Rinat Akhmetov's heyday came after Viktor Yanukovych's victory in the presidential elections of 2010, whom he never stopped supporting all that time. From now on, he was bestowed with the title of the main oligarch in the country, which he continued to confidently hold regardless of political changes in Ukraine. And although during Yanukovych's time such concepts as junior oligarchs and young reformers appeared, Akhmetov and his colleagues from the 90s managed to outlast them all. Before we move on to the next blog, I will remind you to subscribe to my channel and like this video. And if you think my videos help you better understand Ukraine, you can support me on Patreon and buy me a coffee. I will leave links below. One of the key resources of Ukrainian oligarchs has always been the media, primarily television. Through it, they influence both the power directly and public opinion. Back in 1996, the television channel Inter began broadcasting in Ukraine. 29% of the channel's shares belong to the Russian ORT, so it's no surprise that a significant part of the Inter content was programs of the Russian partner, and in 2002, retransition of ORT content completely stopped. From the very beginning, the actual control over Inter was held by the Member of Parliament from the Social Democratic Party United, Igor Plushnikov, for the reason the TV channel was under significant political influence of the SDPU, the most prominent representative of which were Viktor Medvedchuk and Grigory Surkis. This influence in particular manifested itself during the campaign for the election of the mayor of Kiev in 1999, when Surkis ran for the post of the Kiev mayor. However, despite the harsh criticism of Surkis' opponent, the incumbent mayor Alexander Omelchenko, the latter still won with a significant advantage, that is, there was a struggle of media resources of different levels. During the 2004 presidential campaign, Inter predictably supported Viktor Yanukovych. After the victory of the Orange Revolution and Viktor Yushchenko's rise to power, Inter, accordingly to some reports, was sought after by Viktor Medvedchuk and Petro Poroshenko. However, after Pluzhnikov's death in 2005, the new owner became Valery Horoshkovsky, who at one point could also be counted among the oligarchs. In 2009, rumors surfaced that Dmitry Firtash had taken control of Inter, which were not officially confirmed. However, as of early 2013, Firtash DF Group announced the purchase of 100% of the shares of Inter Media Group, which included the Inter channel. It's also important to note that the minority shareholder Serhiy Lyovochkin, who was held various prominent positions, including first deputy to President Leonid Kuchma, head of the administration of President Viktor Yanukovych, and a member of the Verkhovna Rada for several terms, has significant influence over Inter channel. Other channels are also in the sights of Ukrainian oligarchs. For instance, Viktor Pinchuk controls 3 nationwide TV channels, STB, ICTV and Novy Kanal, while Igor Kolomoyskyi consolidated most of the shares of 1+1 channel in his hands in 2009-2010. The importance of the oligarch media resource was vividly demonstrated during the Orange Revolution, when, despite the opposition of the government, the 5th channel, owned by Petro Poroshenko, appeared on the national airspace. The 5th channel was the only one that covered the events of the first Maidan from the perspective of the opposition, and its broadcasting became one of the key components of Viktor Yushchenko's victory. Over the time, 5th channel lost its popularity and thus could no longer provide the necessary media exposure for its owner. In connection with this, after he became president, Poroshenko bought, through a figurehead and ex-MP from the Party of Regions Volodymyr Makyenko, the Tony's channel. The previous owner of the channel was Viktor Yanukovych's eldest son, Alexander, in 2017, which was then renamed to Прямий. That could be translated into English as direct. Since then, the channel has been the main mouthpiece of the fifth president of Ukraine, remaining so even after Poroshenko lost the presidential seat and went into opposition. Rinat Akhmetov can be called a laggard in terms of developing media resources. He owns the Ukraine channel, which despite the name was based in Donetsk for a long time and did not have nationwide coverage. Even after moving to the capital in 2009, Ukraine was not immediately perceived as a nationwide TV channel. Although the channel is now a leader in audience, it does so not because of politics, but because of series. Later, the news channel Ukraine 24 was created, which, however, also did not gain fame. The most recent example of building a media empire, by the way, very successful, was demonstrated by Viktor Medvedchuk, the former controversial head of Kuchma's administration and now no less controversial Putin's buddy and traitor of Ukraine. Medvedchuk, who was almost unheard of for nearly 10 years after the Orange Revolution, returned to high politics after the Revolution of Dignity, first as a parliamentarian with a separatist of the so-called LDNR, and later getting elected to the Verkhovna Rada. Parallel to this, Medvedchuk established control over three news channels: News 1, 112 Ukraine, and Zik. The nominal owner of channels is Medvedchuk's business partner Taras Kozak, which turned into a mouthpiece of Kremlin propaganda in Ukraine. There were also persistent rumors in the media space that Viktor Pinchuk was ready to sell his channels to Medvedchuk, but everything turned out differently. In February 2021, by the decision of the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine, the broadcasting of Medvedchuk's channel was banned. Medvedchuk himself was charged with treason. In addition to media, oligarchs quickly understood that they could sponsor hand-picked deputies to the Verkhovna Rada to lobby for their interests, promoting relevant bills or sabotaging votes on unfavorable laws. For example, in Ukraine there has long been the radical party of Oleg Lyashko, which effectively belongs to oligarch Rinat Akhmetov. Former functionaries of Party of Region also have their hands in the Verkhovna Rada in order to influence politics. Currently, Ukraine is fighting the oligarchy within the country, adopting relevant bills that will limit the influence of large financial and industrial groups. I'm Maria Druska, and see you in my next videos. Slava Ukraini! Do you think they understood anything what she was saying? No, I don't think so. She'd better stick to Orban being a prominent figure. That's right, that's the most clear statement that she has ever made. Oh well.